Hi, I'm Bubble, and the topic today is the history of guide dogs in Victoria. The first specially designed guide dog centre in the world was built on land granted to the National Guide Dog Association by the Victorian government. In 1967, we launched the puppy raising program, enabling young pups to be socialised in a family environment for 12 months before beginning guide dog training. The guide dog story started in 1931 with two amazing British pioneers, Muriel Crook and Rosamund Bond. These remarkable women organised the training of the first 4 British guide dogs from a humble lock-up garage in Mossali, Merseyside. We've come a long way since those early days. Today, Guide Dogs is the world's largest breeder and trainer of working dogs, and thanks to Guide Dogs' dedicated staff and volunteers, and everyone's vital donations, 36,000 lives have been transformed through a guide dog partnership since 1931. The dogs have been trained only by their original owners, as puppy walkers, and the Guide Dog Foundation was only created in 1995. From 1st of July 1998, Guide Dog Victoria assumed the business operations of the National Association, known as the Royal Guide Dogs Association of Australia. These included guide dog breeding, puppy raising, and training programs, as well as guide dog and other mobility services for vision-impaired clients. State associations continue to service vision-impaired clients in their own state. Guide Dog Victoria also became a member of the International Guide Dog Federation. All around the world, there were only about 22,000 guide dogs, which is a minuscule size compared to the 43 million people who are visually impaired. Although those numbers were much smaller back then in 1931, people were already thinking about helping the visually impaired with animals. But the question became, which type of animal best fit with blind people? There are a few factors in qualifying an animal to be able to help the blind. First, they must be loyal, respectful, confident, intelligent, and size fit. This can rule down to only a number of animals, such as cats and dogs. However, they also must not be easily distracted. And statistically, cats are almost always more distracted than dogs. Thus, dogs became the only fit qualifier as guiding animals for visually impaired clients. The first special relationship between a dog and a blind person is lost in the mist of time. But perhaps the earliest recorded example is depicted in a 1st century AD mural in the buried ruins of a Roman Herculaneum. There are other records from Asia and Europe up to the Middle Ages of dogs leading blind men. However, the first systematic attempt to train dogs to aid blind people came around 1780 at a French hospital for the blind in Paris. Shortly afterwards, in 1788, Joseph Reisinger, a blind sieve maker from Vienna, trained a Spitz so well that people often questioned whether he was really blind or not. In 1819, John Wilhelm Klein, founder of the Institute for the Education of Blind in Vienna, mentioned the concept of the guide dog in his book of Educating Blind People and described his method for training guide dogs. A Swiss man, Jacob Beher, wrote in 1847 about his experiences of being guided over a period of 5 years by a dog he'd specially trained himself. The modern guide dog story, however, begins during the First World War, with the thousands of soldiers returning from the front blinded, often by poisonous gas. A German doctor, Dr. Gerhard Starling, got the idea of training dogs en masse to help those affected. While walking with a patient one day through the hospital grounds, he was called away urgently and left his dog with the patient as company. When he returned, he saw signs from the way the dog was behaving that it was looking after the blind patient. Dr. Starling started to explore ways of training dogs to become reliable guides, and in August 1916 opened the world's first guide dog school for the blind in Oldenburg. The school grew and many new branches opened in Bonn, Bristol, Dresden, Essen, Freiburg, Hamburg, Magdeburg, Münster, and Hanover, training up to 600 dogs a year. These schools provided dogs not only to ex-servicemen, but also to blind people in Britain, France, Spain, Italy, the United States, Canada, and the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, due to a reduction in dog quality, the venture had to shut down in 1926. But by that time, another large guide dog training center had opened in Potsdam, near Berlin, which was proving to be highly successful. This school's work broke new ground in the training of guide dogs, and it was capable of accommodating over 100 dogs at a time and providing up to 12 fully trained guide dogs a month. Around this time, a wealthy American woman, Dorothy Harrison Eustace, was already training dogs for the army, police, and customs service in Switzerland. It was to be Dorothy Eustace's energy and expertise that would properly launch the guide dog movement internationally. Having heard about the Potsdam Center, Eustace was curious to study the school's methods and spent several months there. She came away so impressed that she wrote an article about it for the Saturday Evening Post in America in October 1927. A blind American man, Morris Frank, heard about the article and bought a copy of the newspaper. He later quoted that the 5 cents the newspaper cost him bought an article that was worth more than $1 million to me. It changed my life. He wrote to Eustace, telling her that he would very much like to help introduce guide dogs to the United States. Taking up the challenge, Dorothy Eustace trained a dog, Buddy, and brought Frank over to Switzerland to learn how to work with the dog. Frank went back to the United States with what many believe to be America's first guide dog. Eustace later established the Seeing Eye School in Morristown, New Jersey, in 1929, but before this went back to Switzerland to do further work there. Meanwhile, an Italian guide dog organization, Scuola Nazionale Cunigli da Pesciacci, was also established in 1928. The success of the United States experience encouraged Eustace to set up a guide dog school at Vevey in Switzerland in 1928. She called this school, like the one a year later in New Jersey, L'Oeil qui voit, or the Seeing Eye. The schools in Vevey, New Jersey, and Italy were the first guide dog schools of the modern era that have survived the test of time. In 1930, 2 British women, Muriel Crook and Rosamund Bond, heard about the Seeing Eye and contacted Dorothy Eustace, who sent over one of her trainers. In 1931, the first 4 British guide dogs completed their training, and 3 years later, the Guide Dogs for the Blind Association was founded in the UK. Since then, guide dog schools have opened all around the world, and more open their doors every decade. Thousands of people have had their lives transformed by guide dogs, thanks to the organizations that provide them. The commitment of the people who work for these organizations and the people who financially support them is as deep today as it ever was, and the heirs of Dorothy Eustace's legacy continue to work for the increased mobility, dignity, and independence of blind and partially sighted people the world over. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to support guide dogs just like Livia and to support the Guide Dog Foundation. This video is presented by Bubble.